Hey, welcome to What You Doin' with Brandon Horwin.
And Sophie Williams. And today's special guest
Hey,
is
my name is Donna Migliaccio. I am a professional stage actress. I've been in the business for 30 plus years and still chugging along, COVID aside.
Well, welcome to What You Doin'. We're thrilled to have you here today, and thanks for joining us.
Sure, glad to be here.
So the first question I want to bring up is, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to theater, how you got your start, and how you caught the theater bug, and where that sort of led you to climb up the ladder in your career?
Well, I started doing community theater when I was a teenager. I'm an Army brat, and it was a way to, just have some fun. Um, and my mother was a choreographer, and so she would come in and do staging and so forth for the shows. And I had actually gotten my first role was the big Billy Goat Gruff when I was in kindergarten in a production of the Three Billy Goats Gruff. So I guess you could say that's when I got bit. um, but yeah, that community theater, and I was doing probably, I don't know how I didn't fail high school, but I was probably doing 3 4 shows a year with them. And community theater, of course, you rehearse for 6 weeks and perform for like 4 weekends, so it's a long-term uh, commitment with what little time that you have. But I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot. I feel like I'm not a theater grad. I didn't take the theater classes when I was in college. I am a journalism major with a minor in speech. Um, so yeah, that's where I got my groundwork done, was just learning from the people around me. Because the theater was on a military post, you were getting a lot of people who were coming in and out a lot. So you got varying levels of expertise. So sometimes you get somebody who came in who was really good. And so you can learn as much from not people being not so good as you can from the good ones, but the good ones, you really learn to pay attention.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of jumping ahead, you had your Broadway debut as Emma Goldman in the 2009 revival of Ragtime. So for our young audiences, I think it's important to kind of understand the tools that you need to acquire to, to rise above disappointment and move forward in the theater. Because we know the revival only ran for about, I think, 60 something performances. So I think that's an important question for our younger audiences, is how you as an adult kind of mature up and pick up yourself and move on. So can you speak to that?
Well, the interesting thing about Ragtime was that audition came to me at a period where I felt like I couldn't even get arrested. Um, I had hit one of those career lulls. It had gone on for more than a year. And I was seriously giving thought to getting out of the business. I thought, well, maybe I'm at a place where I don't have anything else to offer. People think I have nothing else to offer. And then the Kennedy Center announced that it was doing Ragtime. And someone said, you really must audition for Emma Goldman. And I thought, yeah, okay. And so I went in and I read for it, and then I got it. And we did it at the Kennedy Center first. That was a limited, I want to say about a 5 week engagement, and it was wonderful. And it really sort of gave me new confidence in what I was doing. It's like, you haven't lost it. You still know what you're doing. And then there was this weird 4 to 5 month period where there had been talk about taking it in to Broadway, and I wasn't hearing anything. And friends of mine that were in the show had gotten offers, and I just thought, oh, here we go again. And finally, I think I got a call, but it was to come back in and audition again. And it was like, are you kidding me? Here we are again. And of course, when they called me, it was with very little notice, and it was coming up on the 4th of July weekend. So trying to find transportation up there via bus, everything was sold out. And I was sitting in front of my computer in tears trying to book travel. And my husband came in and said, what's wrong? And I said, I hate my life. And he said, don't you ever say that again. You're going to go up there, you're going to do fine. So we'll find you a way. If we got to, if I have to drive you, if We book a train. It's fine. It'll, we're going to get you up there. Don't worry. So I managed to get a bus reservation because I'm really frugal. I despise having to take the train up there. I mean, I love it, but I just can't handle the expense. And I was still really down on myself. Was like, why am I having to audition for this role that I did for these people already? I found out later it was because Lynn Ahrens, I have a slight sibilancy, which I'm certain that you can hear. She didn't care for it. And she's, all about the diction and all that. And so I found out that later, but that I just couldn't figure out what I had not done right or what I had done wrong, who I'd pissed off. And I just thought, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to whatever. But I was still down on myself, and I was literally walking to the Chelsea studios for the audition. And it was like God reached down and went, bam, and said, if they had found an Emma Goldman better than you, they would have cast her by now. So I was like, okay, all right. And it gave me a whole new mindset going into the audition. So I went in and I felt like I nailed it. I was not afraid to roar because Emma Goldman needs to be able to like grab that stage and hold it by the sheer force of her personality. And I felt like I had done it. And I was auditioning in front of not only all the creatives, but all the producers, of which there were many. And so they said, will you wait outside for just a minute? So I went out and I sat down. Of course, I was shaking because it was, the aftermath of the audition. And the director, Marcia Milgram Dodge, came out and she didn't say anything. She just crouched in front of me. She grabbed my face and she kissed me, and then she went back in. And I thought, I think I may have just nailed this. So, and I did get it. So it was like after going through that period of feeling like I'm never going to work again, I don't know what I'm doing, to land my first Broadway show was just the jolt that I needed. And that happened late in my life. I mean, I was in my 50s when I had my Broadway career. So yeah, it was, you're still learning all the time. You just have to be open to the experience. You can't just go, well, that's it, and give up and walk away. Not if you're going to be serious about it. Yeah,
that's perfect. Thank you.
And so most recently, you were featured in, actually, before we get to that question, I have to introduce the theater that we're going to talk about. So you are the co-founder of the Tony Award-winning professional theater, Signature Theater here in Virginia. So can you tell us a little bit about how this endeavor came about for you? And, after seeing Signature Theater soar over these many years, how did you look back upon, helping to found that creative space?
The thing is that both Eric Schaefer and I had been working in community theater locally, and sat on boards of community theaters and performed, and we felt like that there was a big enough talent pool in the area and not enough opportunities for people who wanted to make the jump from community theater to professional theater. It really, at that time, there weren't that many theaters in town, and now, of course, it's a huge theater town. So we decided we were going to start a theater company, and it was something we used to kid about. And finally, one day it was like, all right, let's see what we can do. And I said, make me two promises. One is that we won't try to fund this out of our own pockets, because I am not independently wealthy, and I know you're not either. And second, let's try to get in under Arlington County's wing, because Arlington County was starting this incubation program for various performing arts groups. So that's how we got started. And we worked out of what had been a library in the old Gunston School in Arlington. It was a carpeted space. It had no dressing rooms. So we did, for our first season, everything that everybody told us that we should do. We did a lot of serious plays. And while no one said, no one went, wow. So Eric said, I think we need to do, for the next season, we need to do what we want to do. And I want to do Sweeney Todd. And it was like, in that teeny tiny space, because it seated about 125 people. And he said, I saw the York Theater's chamber production of it. I think we can do this. And we did. And it's funny because people think that's Signature Theater's first production. It was not. We had a season prior to that. But that was the one that put us on the map.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and most recently, you were featured in the streamed version of Signature Theater's masterpiece, Simply Sondheim. And I know that this process had started years ago, and there was a performance, and it was worked on, and then sort of tucked away for a bit, and now it was revamped during this whole COVID era as a streamed production. So, can you take us a little bit through the creation process of this? And then what was special and unique about being a part of this particular piece for you?
Well, I love Sondheim to start with. I probably have more Sondheim on my resume than any other composer. It's easier for me to talk about the Sondheim musicals I haven't done than it is the ones that I have done. In 2009, I believe that's when we did the original production. It was a concept that Eric Schaefer came up with David Loud, who is an arranger in New York. He's fabulous. To do something that was not only, I think it was in recognition of Sondheim's 80th birthday. I think that's right. And maybe 85th. I don't even know. How old is he now? I can't even remember. Yeah. So anyway, so we wanted to do something that was our own version of a review. And initially Sondheim was resistant to the idea because he felt like there were too many reviews of his work out there. So he said, I will let you do this in celebration of your 25th anniversary. But the caveat is it cannot be produced again. So when it's done, you have to turn over all the arrangements and the scores and everything to me, and that's it. That's done. That's all there is. So it was a 6-person cast. So everybody had plenty of great material to work with. And we didn't have a whole lot of time to put it together. I want to say we had 3 weeks of rehearsal, which is just not a whole lot of time to stage something. And for a lot of people learning the music, I knew a lot of it because I'd done a lot of the shows. But it was a really elegant concept. The costumes were very elegant and sort of high fashion, and but getting to do that material night after night after night. And of course, the first week, probably we were all like, because you felt under rehearsed. But once we got into the groove of it, it was such a pleasure to do. It's just such amazing material. So getting to revisit it this year in a film version was both fun and odd, because not having an audience to play to was really peculiar. And I felt like I had to find sort of rehearsal tempos and rehearsal energy levels and that sort of thing. Because, you feed off an audience's energy. When they're not there, it's sort of like, you have to make all that energy yourself. So yeah, I love doing it again. But I really love doing it live.
Yeah, definitely.
And how did you guys get Mr. Sondheim's special permission to take the process on?
Sondheim has been, I think he's still is an honorary board member since the theater's forming almost. Eric Schaefer had a really good relationship with him. And basically, we do a lot of his work. Signature sponsors the Sondheim Award every year. So, there's that connection to it. So that's why we were able to open up that kind of dialogue with him to do it.
Yeah. So still on Sondheim, like, what do you think about him and his work attracts you as well as the other co-founders and other artists of Signature Theater?
I had a friend tell me once that, you actors only like doing Sondheim because it makes you feel smart. Yes, it does. It makes you feel like you've jumped. It feels like a steeplechase sometimes. Like if you get in the rhythm, you can leap every fence and every hedge that there is. And it's a thing of beauty when it all comes together. And it's really smart work. Sondheim doesn't pander. He writes what he writes. And I'm a writer as well, and I appreciate the way that he uses words. I mean, there's nobody like him. And so there's a feeling of such accomplishment when a Sondheim show comes together beautifully. And the thing on the other hand, if it doesn't come together, it can really bite you in the ass. But Sondheim done badly is that you just can't get any worse. It's done well, it's a thing of beauty. Done badly, it's like, whoa, go do something else that's a little more forgiving.
Absolutely. I just wrote to Sondheim after like 2 years of thinking about what I can say, and I got a response from him like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
Just a special moment.
What'd he say? What'd he say?
He said that he was great, like nice to hear that his work has had such an impact on my life. He used the word salubrious, which I hear is like golden for him to use such a word. And I had to mention his film, The Last of Sheila, because Sophie and I are in a media class right now. It was a film and emotion class, and we watched that film that he wrote. And he was so thrilled to hear that I mentioned the film, because he claimed that he didn't get a lot of letters about his film that he's so fond of, but he gets many about his shows.
I'm sure he does. And I'm sure people don't write him to thank him for the crossword puzzles either, because he creates crossword puzzles.
So you most recently were in the cast on Broadway, I should say, in the cast of War Paint. Mm-hmm. And you performed the understudy for Patti LuPone of the role of Helena Rubinstein.
Correct.
What challenges did you face understudying for Patti, and how was your experience going on for the role?
I mean, it's a ginormous part. I mean, the show is basically Helena Rubinstein and Elizabeth Arden. So it was Patti LuPone and Christine Ebersole. And there are other people in the show, but that's the show. So there were probably, I want to say something like 7 solo numbers, and a lot of costume changes and all that. But the thing to remember about that experience is that I was not only covering Patti, I was covering 3 women in the ensemble as well. And I think the emphasis was more on my learning the ensemble tracks, swinging those tracks, because no one ever thought Patti would go out. And she was having major hip issues. She needed to have a hip replacement. And that just got worse and worse and worse as the run went on. And so when I went on for her the first time, I had very little rehearsal in the role of Helena Rubinstein. Most of what we've been focusing on in understudy rehearsals was the ensemble tracks. So I was fortunate in that during rehearsal, once we moved into the theater, and actually even when we were in the studio, Ms. Ebersole and Ms. LuPone were not usually called in until the afternoon. So the ensemble, the whole rest of the cast would be there around 10. So we'd be working numbers, and Patty Cohenauer, who covered Christine, and I would be called in to stand in frequently in the ensemble numbers. So there'd be a body there. So I knew staging in the ensemble numbers, but staging in the solo material and staging in the scenes, I just did not have an opportunity to work with on stage in the space, and certainly not with all the costume changes. So I had, I think, about an hour and 45 minutes notice for the matinee that I was going on. And I thought, I know I am rock solid on this music, and I'm pretty solid on the dialogue material. The hitch was I hadn't had a chance to rehearse it with people very much. You know, you're rehearsing it with an assistant stage manager or with your fellow understudies, or at home in the emptiness of your little apartment. It's not like doing it on stage in the moment. So I didn't have a chance to do any of that. I basically got to the theater and got thrown in immediately with Catherine Zuber, the costume designer, and Patty's dresser, and a bunch of other people trying to get me ready to go on, because they hadn't even finished my costume plot. I had Catherine Zuber is amazing. And so I had stand-in costumes in case stuff wasn't done. So it was just a matter of letting go and trusting that Lyle, Patty's dresser, was going to get me dressed and on stage, which he did with that much, worry and flurry. I mean, he was on it. And just making certain that I didn't completely fall over myself. So I got through on sheer adrenaline. And then I had to do the evening show. So I didn't leave the theater. I stayed there. Somebody brought me a sandwich. I had called my husband down in DC to say, I'm going on. And I knew there was no way he could get there for the matinee, but he got there in time to see the evening show. So that gave me a real lift to know that he was there. And then by gum, I had to go on again the next day. So, and it was just, I think I went on a total of 9 times for Patty. And after the first 3, I got much more relaxed. I got a sense of the rhythm of the show. I mean, her range is my range. So it was completely comfortable music for me to sing. When I had to go on in swing roles, however, I don't think I'm a very good swing. I really think you need to have a dance background to be a good swing, and I am not a dancer. You have to be able to just go where you're told to go, hit that mark, and not have to have any rationale for it. I'm an actress and I need to know why. Why am I going in that direction? And nobody has the time to deal with that. So I really felt under-rehearsed when I went on in the ensemble parts. Fortunately, I only had to do that a couple of times. But and again, it's just as many freaking costume changes as there were for Patty. Everybody, anytime anybody came off stage, they changed clothes. So yeah, so it was a little traumatizing at times. So, I would never swing again. That's the short answer about the whole thing. Would I understudy a lead like Patty LuPaine? Sure, not a problem. Can't swing. Just can't do it. And I have such respect for those who can.
Yeah. It's a big job. So you've worked pretty consistently in DC's largest theaters, obviously Signature, Arena, Only, Ford's, the Kennedy Center. So how have you been able to just maintain your craft kind of in this area specifically? What is it about the people or the theaters that have just kept you in this area for so long?
Well, first of all, I have a husband and a mortgage here. Yep. So this is home. And weirdly, and Broadway was not what I intended to do with my life. I just wanted to be in good theater. And commercial theater is very, very different from nonprofit. We're talking money. We're talking people want a return on their investment. So if the show is not selling, things can be really unpleasant in commercial theater. People get really unhappy. And I mean, I had a feeling going in with Ragtime that the show was just not going to run that long. So I can't say that I was surprised when it closed fairly early. I just think it was a little too soon. And our show got compared against the original, which was very lavish and spared no expense. And it's probably why the producer ended up with major financial difficulties down the road. But it's hard for me to be away from home. And it was hard doing that because you just never know. They could announce the closing the next week, and there you'd be with, your sublet, and you have to find somebody to, that for me has always been the hardest part, is that going up there and trying to find a place where I can live and, and still have the freedom to step away from it without signing like a year-long lease or something like that. I don't want to live in New York. Yeah. Nonprofit, I feel like you have a little more wiggle room and a little less of that sort of budget hanging over your head that you have to make your nut from week to week, or else the show doesn't run. I mean, I felt like War Paint was sort of kept artificially going when it really probably should have closed earlier. And that again there's a lot of egos in producers have big egos, and they want to have a hit all the time. And it was very interesting to me to watch I would always look at what the sales were like that week, look at I think it was a Ticketmaster or something, would let you see what seats were available. And the day before the show, there would be all these seats available for a performance of War Paint. And then the day of, suddenly they were gone. And I thought either they have really sold these at a discount or they've papered the house. I mean, that's just not the way theater sales go. So that was the learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So more speaking about your DC experience, you have a wildly impressive resume, particularly in DC. But you also have listed Broadway 3 Generations, which was done at the Kennedy Center, which we just learned about in researching. So for those who don't know, it's essentially a combination of abridged versions of Girl Crazy, Bye Bye Birdie, and Sideshow, directed by Lonnie Price and choreographed by Randy Skinner. So can you tell us more about this like really amazing sounding experience you had?
Yeah, it was a funny little job. It was mostly out of towners. I think there were 3 local people who were hired for it, maybe 4. So I was thrilled. And in fact, that's how I got to know James Moore, who was the music director for it. And James was the one who said, you really need to read for Ragtime, because he's been the associate music director and I think conductor for the original Broadway Ragtime. So he said, you really need to do this. And then later on, he ended up being the music director for the revival. But yeah, what it was that the Eisenhower Theater had just undergone some major renovations. The building had been, the theater space in the Kennedy Center had been closed. So what they did was they came up with this idea of doing these 3 shows in celebration of the space being reopened. And somebody called, I think it was Lonnie, called it doing rep on speed, because it was a large part the same company of people, and you still had to learn 3 shows in no time at all. I don't know how the dancers did it, because the style changed for all the dancers. Bye Bye Birdie is wildly different than Girl Crazy, and yet they did it. So yeah, that's how that odd little thing came about, and it was fun. A little crazy, but fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're happy to hear about it. We were like, what is this?
It looked really, really cool.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how they pared all 3 shows down so that they were workable in one evening.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm grateful for with this podcast, because in the history of things that happen in this area in DC, sometimes in New York, reviews, different projects, or like one night only, collaborations or limited runs like this, we never, it's hard to stumble upon them and look at, that this happened several years ago, until we're about to interview someone and we look at like someone like your resume, and it's really impressive and really cool for us to learn that things like this happen.
Yeah. It was just one of those little oddities.
Yeah, definitely. So what advice would you have for young artists just looking to stay creative during this like tumultuous time? And what advice would you have for them going forward in their career?
What I would love to see happen is the mentality of the show must go on being erased from our profession. I know when I was coming up in the business, the emphasis of the guilt trip when you have to call out is so enormous. And the thing is that this is all you get, this body, this voice, these arms and legs. And I have known so many performers who have felt pressured to go on when they were ill or injured, and it made it worse for them. So my first and foremost piece of advice to anybody wanting to go in this business is look after yourself first. Your health is important. It's the most important thing you have going for you. It doesn't matter how talented you are. If you're too sick or injured to work, you're not going to make it any better than going on. And you will still run into major theaters that will not hire understudies, or they'll hire understudies and they're people that, that they're kids a lot of the time. And I think it's a great opportunity for a young person to understudy a role that's appropriate for them. But I've been understudied by 19-year-olds at my current age. And it's just like, that's not going to happen. So that puts immense pressure on you to perform sick because you don't want to let the show down. But ultimately, that's not your job. That's the job of the producer. So yeah, look after yourself first. And the other is to get your priorities in order. People are like, oh, you should go on even if you've had a death in the family. We get to grieve too. If I missed my parents' 50th wedding anniversary because I was doing a show. And my understudy, and I did have an understudy, had already been given that weekend off because she had a wedding to go to. And it was like, so I missed my parents' 50th. My parents were cool with it. They understood the business, but in retrospect, I wish I hadn't.
Yeah.
So priorities and your health.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So you've taken on some classic roles on your resume. Some include Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney Todd, Mrs. Peru and The Music Man, Mama Rose and Gypsy, Fraulein Schneider and Cabaret, Charlotte and A Little Night Music. So can you take us through your process of crafting these roles and how you sort of infuse your own voice into these characters?
I find that I don't often play, I play bad guys a lot. And the thing that I love about bad guys is that you always know their motive. And frequently with the lead or, the good person, the motive is not clear. The motive is something like love. And, that's such a nebulous kind of thing. But bad guys generally, their motive and they generally have all the good lines. So that's usually the kind of role that I'm eager to play, is it's got a lot of juice in there, a lot of meat to gnaw on. And so that's a lot of fun. I Mrs. Lovett is clearly one of my favorite roles. I wish that I could do one more, but I think I'm a little old for it now. I love to play. I played Ursula the Sea Witch twice, and I adored her. She was just absolutely unabashed and unashamed bad person. So that was a lot of fun. So, when I approach doing a part, it's like, well, you ask yourself the question, what do they want? What do they want? And sometimes it's easy to find out, like, when you're playing Ursula, she wants to screw over Triton. Or it's Mrs. Lovett, she wants to get Sweeney. But it's sometimes a little more difficult when you're playing Mrs. Peru, for example. Like, what does Mrs. Peru want? She wants her children to be happy. So that's what I try to like boil everything down to like one or two wants, and then start working from there. And I'm all about the text. I get really huffy when people try to change the text, because as a writer, I also appreciate what goes into writing a play. And when people just want to change a line because it suits them, that makes me crazy. It's like, why is it written that way? There's a reason for why it's written that way. And the reason why it's interpreted that way is this is what the playwright intended. So intent is a large part of what I'm looking for as well. And then it's just, it's like a glove, trying to like put your hand in the glove and fill out all the fingers, and inhabit the glove completely from the inside. And sometimes you can get some stuff from the outside, like costumes can be a huge help in nailing down a character. A wrong costume can really screw you up. I have had conversations with costumers where it's like, we are not on the same page about who this character is. I win. I just didn't know. And I'm not, a diva, but I know who this character is. I've been inhabiting the character in rehearsal for weeks and weeks. And when you get a costume that doesn't work, it's like, you have to trust me. I know where I want to go with this. So yeah, does that answer some of your question?
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. So just winding down here, we just want to know if there's a favorite show you've ever done, a favorite experience, someone you've worked with that you loved like dearly, any like favorite stories you have that you just love sharing with people?
Um, Probably my favorite theater experience. I did the Sondheim celebration that the Kennedy put on some years ago, and I had just come off a year on the road with a tour of Guys and Dolls that was fraught, largely because it happened. We had been out for, I think, 2 weeks, and 9/11 happened. And it was a very rough time to be on the road. So I got back in, and so I was going to be in Sunday in the Park with George playing the nurse, a role that I'd done before. So I was comfortable with it. But the difference was that we had people coming from all over the world to see these shows, and they'd come for a weekend and see 3 shows. And our final performance of Sunday in the Park with George, and it was weird because we only did like 12, 13, 14 performances. So I was talking to Raul Esparza when we were getting ready to close, and he goes, I don't, this is such a weird feeling. I said, yeah, it feels like being in a flop, doesn't it? Because it did. It was like, this show deserved to run and run and run. And yet, it was a limited run. So we were getting ready to do the first act finale Sunday. And as you probably know, that it begins with George saying order. And then there's the little musical sting, and he goes through all the elements of putting the painting together. And there's the little musical sting. And then we get into this very quiet, almost reverent sounding vamp. And that goes on. I don't remember how many vamps there were, but when it was time for us to all to sing Sunday, we all inhaled, and the audience inhaled with us. You could hear them. And I was afraid I was going to lose it. It still makes me a little excited now, because that's what live theater is about. It's not about you on the stage. It's about you collaborating with all these people, your fellow performers, your musicians, your stage manager, your crew, your creative team, your design team, all those people, and the audience. And the audience is what makes it different. And it's why I've never had any interest in doing film or TV. I need that collaboration with a live audience. And that moment in my career was where it was just like, there they are. There they are. This is amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. Well, congratulations on everything you've done. It's been you've had a remarkable career, will continue to have a remarkable career. I know
your mouth to God's ears.
That's the verge of, everybody's, chomping at the bit to get into the theaters together.
I want to so badly. It just, I miss it so much. And coming in, when we came in to start filming Simply Sondheim, and being in a room with my fellow performers and with a live orchestra, that was wonderful, and it just lacked that one last component.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I know the streaming has ended fairly recently for Simply Sondheim, but it's been a successful, like, over 2 month, almost 3 month, I think, engagement. So is there anything else we could promote on here for you, or just for folks to keep their eyes out on your website for the
just my website's www.donnamigliaccio.com. If you want to support a struggling actor while there's no theater work, you can buy my books. I have a fantasy series out there that I'm busy writing the final book in the series. I hope it's the final book in the series. So, there's that out there. So yeah, just wait and see. We're all waiting with bated breath.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a thrill and a pleasure to talk with you.
It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we'll stay in touch, stay well and safe until we could see each other in person.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.